Thank you so much. So we're going to be talking about responding to humanitarian crisis, a role for community development, initiatives ranging from support to refugees from war, through entrepreneurship training with impoverished women to with an advocacy for peace. And we have three presenters from Ukraine, Ireland, and Bulgaria. And Yulia, it seems like you're with us here. So we'll do no more than 15 minutes of presentation and then open the floor for questions for the remainder of our session. Does that make sense to everyone? And I'll keep an eye on time, and we'll keep an eye on the chat. So if anyone has questions in the chat, I'll keep an eye on there to make sure we have them at the end. Thank you all so much. And whenever you're ready, please feel free to start.
So I can start, right? So
yes,
thank
please.
you. Yes, I'm going to share my presentation and tell me if you see it okay. So my today's presentation is about the support of children with disabilities and their families during the war in Ukraine. And I want to start my presentation as I started it last year about what we had in Ukraine. Just a moment, please. So, in Ukraine, there are about 163,000 disabled children. And of course, we had some problems with supporting them on the level of state and on the national level and regional level and city level. But anyway, what we had in Ukraine for last year and before the start of the war. So for disabled children, we had free resort vouchers and vacation vouchers, rehabilitation and recreation in the children camps, social services in inpatient care in boarding school, travel benefits, state social assistance, transportation, provision of technical and other means of rehabilitation. So not less, but not very much. And our system was developing all the time. And speaking about the inclusive education, we had in total 18,000 inclusive classes where we had disabled children. But on the 24th of February, everything has changed. The Ukraine was invaded by Russia and the war began. So more than 2,500 educational establishments were destroyed, and some of them, about 270, are destroyed completely now. And that is a really big problem for Ukraine. And even now, in more or less calm cities, children have to study in basements because not all of the educational establishments have shelters. Of course, we rearrange them, rebuild them, but anyway, children have to go to basement, to shelters, sometimes even several times a day when we have air alarm in the city. And this situation is really difficult for disabled children because, as everyone knows, they got to use to some special, let's say, situation, to ordinary situation, to ordinary events, ordinary actions every day, and it is extremely difficult for them. Extremely. Speaking about people. We have more than 12 million people migrated abroad, and more than 8 million people migrated within the country. Again, for disabled people, and especially for disabled children, it is extremely difficult to move somehow, especially when they are in wheelchairs. Luckily, I would say that now about 5 million people came back to Ukraine from abroad. And for me personally, it is like a marker, like a sign that they believe in our army, and they believe that soon we won't have a war in Ukraine, and we will have peaceful life. Well, now I want to tell a little bit about the organizations and about the people who help disabled children and their families in Ukraine, and also who help us abroad. So the first one is our organization, which is called Beehive of Ideas, and it was established 12 years ago, and our work is always about children, for children, and also about disabled children, for them and their families. Unfortunately, now we cannot do as much as we did before the war, I mean. But anyway, so what we try and what we do now, we help families with medicine and different kinds of care products. We help with wheelchairs and other equipment. We also try to organize some culture projects. For example, here on the picture, you can see a small excursion to one of the museums in Kiev, which is called the Museum of Darkness. So here it is, of course, you can see the light, but then the light is over, it is switched off, and you cannot see anything, just anything. The guides are also people, blind people, and when ordinary people, they go to the museum, they can understand how blind people live. And it is a really new experience for them, because normally we can see a lot of people can see everything, but when you cannot see anything, it is just a new experience how to touch all the objects, how do they not look like, but how they are touchable, and so on and so forth. Also, we help to premature babies. That is our loan project. Here we cooperate with the organization in Ukraine, which works with premature babies and their families. And here you can see just a colorful octopus. It is this project started in Europe, and I'm one of the volunteers of this project, and I need these octopuses for little children, and they say that it helps them to recover better and faster and go to their family. And also here you can see a book. I was lucky to be one of the interpreters of the poems in this book. This book is with the poems, theoretical poems for children and written by children during the war. So it is in Ukrainian and English languages, and you can find there the theoretical poems which can be helpful to all the children, including disabled children, during these very difficult times. Here you can see some pictures of our help to people on liberated territories in Kiev region. and also in during the hard times in Kiev at the very beginning of the war. So we had with our partners, we had several travels, let's say, to the liberated villages, to the liberated territories in Kiev region, and we brought there not only food, not only dairy products, but also some food for animals and so on and so forth. And also I want to tell about some other organizations which are our partners. For example, this organization is called Osoblivi. It is in Ukrainian, or special in English. They have more than 25 different directions, and they help for more than 300, but in fact more than 500 families with disabled children, and they didn't stop their work during the war. They continue to work. Many of their directions, many of their projects, they became online. For example, special museum where children can visit different museums online, or you can see here the women. It is also like a women's circle, we call it, like a typical psychological meetings for women, when they can create such national dolls, as you can see here on the picture, and also online paintings, special paintings they are called, and many other projects, and also offline projects, as you can see here on the picture, like children with disabilities are invited to sports events, to sports games, just to communicate with the sportsmen, and just to relax a little bit, and don't be so stressed during these difficult times. So here is another organization which is called Faith in Miracle. It is also a non-governmental organization, and they have more than 200 families which they work with. And their help now, their support now is mostly with dairy products, medicine, household chemicals, and you can see it also on the picture. The organization is also situated in Kiev and Kiev region. I want also tell you some words about our partners abroad. This is a Polish organization. They do just huge work and huge help to Ukraine, and actually with the help of them, with their support, we was able to give some wheelchairs to the hospitals, and also to families with disabled children, and also with disabled adults. And one more organization, the last one, our favorite, lovely partners, the Civil Society Development Forum. This is the organization which was established with the help of just ordinary citizens of Kiev, and they just do huge work with the help of people, and they also help not only people but also animals in Kiev region, and also in the whole Ukraine, and if we speak about, for example, soldiers, and of course disabled people and disabled children in the Kiev region. That is all actually what I wanted to tell you. I will be glad to answer the questions if you have one later after the presentations, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. If anyone has questions for the end, please type them in our chat. We're keeping an eye on that. I did get, Anessa has let us know that after the discussion part of the session, we are going to go on Facebook Live for a few minutes. So if the speakers and tech support could stay for that, that would be great. And we'll do another reminder at the end. But thank you again so much for that presentation. Our second presentation is the role of community development and advocacy for ceasefire, peace talks, and peace settlement. And it is from our colleague Liam McGlynn in Ireland. And Liam, you're there with us?
Yes, Holly, I'm here.
Great, great. We are ready for you whenever you are ready.
Okay, I'll just see if I can do my slideshow. Can everybody see that? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Anessa. Thank you, Holly. And thank you, Yulia, for a really interesting presentation. I feel you know a lot more about Ukraine than me. I am speaking from a distance from Ireland, and we have our history of conflict and war in Ireland. So today I'm going to speak a bit about peace and conflict resolution to end Putin's war against Ukraine, the role of community development in advocacy for ceasefire, peace talks, and peace settlement. So I'm going to cover a little bit of background about Ireland and our peace process. I'll say a little bit of what we're hearing about the war in Ukraine from our sources in Ireland and Britain. I'm going to say a bit about Ireland's role as a small country in the United Nations and international peace. Then we'll speak about what is dear to our hearts, the work we do as community workers, community development response in Ireland to the war in Ukraine. Then I'm going to present two frameworks to have a dialogue or discussion about understanding the conflict and a tool maybe towards eventually peace. So in this presentation, I'm saying that we respond to the needs of Ukraine, particularly in Ireland, the needs of refugees fleeing war in Ukraine, but also to try to bring an end to the war and work for peace and settlement. So there's a lot of information here. I won't deal with all of it, but just the main points. People will know we have had a historic conflict between Great Britain and Ireland 700 years, where Great Britain annexed Ireland, the territory of Ireland, okay? The 700-year conflict. This year, we are remembering 100 years of independence. 1921, there was a peace settlement where Ireland, 26 counties on the island of Ireland, gained independence. However, 6 counties remain under the UK. We had a terrible conflict for 30 years called the Troubles. This was a conflict between Irish paramilitaries and the British Army. It was a conflict between Catholic community and Protestant community. 3,000 people died and many, many more injured. A legacy of hurt and pain. Thankfully, the peace process came about as a result of ceasefire, the IRA ceasefire, and commitments from the British to peace talks. Multi-party talks. We had an independent chairman from Senator George Mitchell from Holly's country, from the United States. Senator George Mitchell, a great American who supported Ireland's peace process. The Good Friday Agreement was signed in 1998. So we've had the Good Friday Agreement 20 years in 2008.
Valentina.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So the Good Friday Agreement was the culmination of the peace talks. So we've had an end to violent conflict. Also, community development was supported by the Programme for Peace and Reconciliation, the EU Programme for Peace and Reconciliation. Now, I'll say a bit about the conflict in Ukraine. This is a snapshot, a short summary. And I'm very aware our hearts go out to the people of Ukraine and participants who are with us here today from Ukraine. Solidarity with Ukraine. There has been geopolitical tension between Russia and the West since the Cold War. Vladimir Putin, autocrat, wishes to expand Russian influence to recreate a Russian empire. However, we also have a problem in the West. Many would argue on the peace side that NATO is a problem. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization is a military defense alliance with 30 member states. There is a clause, Ireland is not a member, but many European countries are members of NATO. An attack against one or several of its members is considered an attack against all. NATO is open to applications for membership from countries that were formerly part of the Eastern Bloc, part of Russia's sphere of influence. As we know, as Julia referred to, the 24th of February, Russia illegally invades Ukraine. There was a failure of talks between Russia and NATO, and Russia used that as an excuse to invade Ukraine. Also, Russia had amassed an army on the border of Ukraine. The result is a refugee crisis. The result has been destruction of Ukraine, killing, shelling, destruction of infrastructure, schools, hospitals. Also, human rights abuses and war crimes of the Russian army, and the United Nations have independent verification. Bucha and Izium are examples of war crimes. At the same time, on the other side, Finland and Sweden apply to join NATO. The US, Britain, Germany, and France and other countries supply weapons for Ukraine to defend itself. Then in the last week, Russia has annexed 4 eastern provinces with a sham or rigged referendum. And Ukraine has indicated they will apply to join NATO. So the problem continues. The problem of the war continues in this atmosphere. There is no peace negotiation, no diplomacy. Both sides are at war. Well, Ukraine is, Russia is continuing its war against Ukraine. Now, I move on to Ireland's position. We are a neutral country, Ireland. We affirm peace and pacific settlement of international disputes. This is Ireland's policy ever since the Second World War. We did not take sides. Okay? The state shall not adopt a decision taken by the European Council to establish a common defence policy, a common defence. So in Ireland, we are militarily neutral. Okay? I hope that's understood for everyone. At the moment, Ireland has a unique position. We are an elected member of the UN Security Council for 2 years, 2021 to 2022. So Ireland has a unique voice at the international table for peace and advocating for peace. In Ireland, we have many small NGOs, non-government organisations, which advocate to protect Ireland's neutrality. Peace and Neutrality Alliance is a small NGO which has questioned why the Irish government have not done more to advocate for ceasefire and peace in Ukraine. The Irish anti-war movement previously opposed the invasion of Iraq by the US and the UK without a UN mandate. So it is somewhat controversial neutrality in Ireland, but traditionally the Irish government and the people of Ireland are fully supportive of neutrality. We have a stronger voice for peace than to take part in any conflict. Okay, now the response for community development to the Ukraine crisis. We feel it's important that we engage with the Ukrainian community in Ireland. They have first-hand experience of the conflict. Community development organizations are responding to the needs of the Ukrainian community: accommodation, healthcare, employment, education, integration. We reject divisive spreading hate between the host community and refugees. We reject hierarchies in international protection. Ireland has obligations in human rights law to protect all refugees fleeing war, famine, displacement, and climate chaos. So Ireland, through the community development organizations on the ground, is supporting positive, welcoming environment for Ukrainian refugees and all refugees. There's just one example there. LGBT Ireland is supporting LGBT Ukrainian refugees in a particular way. And also, Community Work Ireland, and I'm part of that, promotes a community work response among projects to support all refugees and stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Now, I'll finish up. I'm just lost track of time and I don't want to go over my time, but I want to present two tools that could be used to have a dialogue about the conflict. But it is crucial that people from Ukraine are included in this dialogue. People who are fleeing Ukraine here in Ireland, that they are part of this dialogue. Any conflict, whether it's interpersonal, intercultural, intercommunity, or in this case, international, has 5 elements. Needs, the needs of the parties to the conflict, the facts, they are the things often disputed, the positions, the methods used, and unfortunately violence and physical force is being used at the moment, and the values of the parties to the conflict. Let me expand a little bit and consider how could this be applied to the conflict in Ukraine, or Putin's war against Ukraine. The facts, often disputed. Who or what started the war? In this case, it's quite clear, Russia invaded Ukraine. Who did what and when? Often there is claim and counterclaim. We need some independent verification of facts. What are the needs? There are the basic needs: food and shelter, the need for protection, belonging, identity, security, and respect. The values: respect, recognition, nationality, culture, and identity. The positions: you have 2 opposing positions. Putin claims territory, Ukraine defends its sovereign territory. Now here's the thing, the methods. What we are seeing at the moment is physical force, armed conflict, defense on the part of Ukraine, shelling on the part of the Russian army. So it's a physical, violent response. It's a military response. It's a military escalation and a military response. What we are not seeing is diplomacy, dialogue, negotiation, arbitration, non-violence, pacifism. These need to be brought in to the conversation I'm proposing. So this is the one framework. Finally, a conflict can be reframed, any conflict. In Ireland, we had a territory dispute between those 2 islands. Territory. That was the dispute. We reframe it as relations between people, relationships between people, from territory to people. That was the first reframing. Secondly, the principle of consent. And thirdly, from direct rule from London to devolution. That means regional decision-making and government. From violence to peaceful means. How might the war in Ukraine be reframed? How might we have a new conversation about the war to bring an end to the war? I think there's one example, a glimmer of hope. The agreement brokered by the UN and Turkey to release grain shipments from the port of Odessa is an example of a brokered agreement between Ukraine and Russia. Even though they weren't involved, two negotiators, UN and Turkey, brokered an agreement that was held. It alleviates also global food insecurity and famine. So can the UN Turkey brokered agreement be a model for achieving a ceasefire leading to peace talks? And finally, getting back to community development. Community development principle of human rights, equality, and anti-discrimination must inform our twofold response to the war in Ukraine. Number one, we stand with Ukraine in support of Ukrainian refugees, welcome and international protection. And secondly, we advocate for ceasefire, Russian military withdrawal from Ukraine, conflict resolution, and peace, which is crucial. It is crucial to engage the voices from the Ukrainian community in Ireland. There is an example of the reframing in the conflict in Ireland. You see, the map there is very different to the one I started with, from territory and land to the relationships between people. And I'll end there with those references. I hope I didn't go over time.
Just a tiny bit, Liam, but thank you so much. I think we're doing great overall on time. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Molly.
Okay, I did note that we have some questions coming in. Thank you. Keep them coming in, and I'm making note. And then we have one more talk before we start our group conversation, and that is from our colleagues in Bulgaria, and it is informal learning for Ukrainian refugees in Bulgaria. Eva?
Yes.
You
Hello.
there?
Hello.
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 We are ready for you whenever you're ready to start.
Thank you. It's very nice to see you all. My name is Eva Boneva, and I'm from the Association for Shared Learning ELA, which is a non-governmental organization in Bulgaria. We are more than 16 years old organization, and we were called until recently Center for Inclusive Education. And when we started in the beginning of this century working together, we were working mainly with children with disabilities and with learning difficulties, with parents and teachers. And the more schools we were working with, the more we discovered that it is much more effective if we focus on the school environment and make it supportive for every child than if to focus on a disability of a child, like we started. So it took us almost 10 years, but we did manage to develop, with the help of our colleagues from United States of America and some from UK, the model for creating an inclusive school environment, and now we are doing it also in Portugal, Greece, and in Romania. It's working. It does require a lot of efforts on behalf of the teachers and school principal, but it actually pays off at the end, because we, and like every teacher probably knows, we discovered that every child at some point in their life would need support and acceptance. Children with disabilities probably throughout their life, but same is valid for children refugees, for children from cultural or ethnic minorities, for children. Some children would need a temporary support if they have a divorce or death in a family. So if we manage to create such an inclusive environment in school, so that every child can find its place, his or her place there, and same for every teacher and parent, it makes it easier for everyone. And this is why we changed our name 3 years ago now to Association for Shared Learning, because we, instead of Center for Inclusive Education, because we discovered that learning is always shared. And we wanted this humble understanding from our name, much from children we work with as they do from us, and sometimes even more. So when the war, this was kind of introduction to why we are called, what we are called, and who I am. We work in schools, we work with children, we work with young people, and we work with teachers and parents. And when the war started in Ukraine, we had other plans, and I was just back from the States. And then my colleague said, but we can go in a big one. We can do educational training, educate refugee children from Ukraine. Made an announcement, and we were flooded with children, starting from 2 till 18. So we divided them in 4 groups, according to their age. Each group received like 3 hours with a break between to eat something. And we sought a lot of donations, and we basically changed the learning. And we found some teachers, Ukrainians, but also Bulgarians, and we started. And our idea was that we will be focused on learning, because we wanted to keep the children focused on. So it was very hard in the beginning. We wanted to keep them focused on their curiosity, on learning, on exploring. Now I'm laughing every day in the office, but in the beginning I was like that every day. So it was fun in the beginning. We were so unprepared. But so we did a lot of reading. We had colleagues. I'm also a trained psychologist, but we were not ready. It got much better after I did some training with the Israeli Trauma Coalition psychiatrist, but before, as well with my colleagues, but before that, it was learning by doing. Or somebody told us that when children have something like a shelter. So it took us 2 weeks, but managed to get a very nice house, like a playground, a big one. A bank bought us for us. And we had, in the smallest group, we had 12 children, and they were always 12 of them in the house. So the teacher was, get this house away, because they're always all of them together in the house, and it starts to break. It's like in the story in the tale about the wolf and the 3 pigs. The house just falls apart because everybody needs to be there all the time. So it was very tough, but we had to get rid of the house. And then they started to have different houses. We had shelters all over. You could find small children under a chair, somebody in a wardrobe. In toilet, they would make their shelters with different pillows and blankets and stuff. But we focused on the learning process, and we were amazed that actually children were learning, and they started calling this school. We had one girl in the beginning who couldn't sleep at home, so she only would sleep at school. she would curl on the floor on the carpet, and the teacher would cover her with the blanket, and everybody would be shh for 3 hours. They would be studying quiet so that she can sleep, because she couldn't sleep at home. And we had other curiosities like this, but I think the best thing was that actually we kept the structure, 3 hours when we have to eat, that we have some sort of homework. And for older kids, we, on purpose, we had a teacher who only spoke Bulgarian and English. She didn't speak any Russian or Ukrainian. And she spoke to them in English, and English-speaking Ukrainian children had to translate in Ukrainian for them to understand. And then they started, of course, using the online translators. But now all of our kids speak Bulgarian, more or less, because it was just, you know, this community development experience. Because we are very proud that they learned Bulgarian, their English improved. They picked the topics from the very beginning, like great ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, logic, chess, Italian, different subjects they would pick. But the best thing was that when they came, they were really scared and they didn't know anyone. And then they had these groups, these friends. They celebrated birthdays, name days. We went to various excursions and walks on the mountains, on the lake. We went to a baseball game, to various museums. We cooked, and this is how basically became friends, culminating in going to the seaside at the summer camp with 70 Bulgarian kids this summer. And this was for teenage kids from Ukraine, which was real fun. And all this time, obviously we had moms. And the beginning, it was really hard because moms would bring the kids, but then they wouldn't know what to do. Shall they wait? Shall they go? Is it safe to leave them with us? Who are we? Will kids be okay? What about other kids? And so we said, and we started, have tea, have coffee, but then we said, let's bake something. We have a kitchen in the office. So we started with Bulgarian pastries. And then we asked them, can you show us some Ukrainian pastries? And my God, the pirahi, they're very nice. And so they started cooking regularly with kids so that they have something to eat on the break. And then they came from culinary houses, and we had some courses and many other things like that. But we are now, because most of the kids started their online school or regular Bulgarian school or went home, we are now meeting on a very regular basis every weekend just to hang on together, just to be together. And once we went to the baseball association, they were very nice. And I thought that it would be curious for kids to try baseball, like I never tried. It's very un-Bulgarian game. And two of them became talents, like they were born talents. So the scout attracted them, and one of them still goes. The other, Vanya, went home, and now we receive videos from him from home. So what we now do is we have after online school educational moment, they still call it school, and we work with children with autism who are from Ukraine, because one of our teachers specializes in working with children with disabilities and severe disabilities, and there are lots of kids like that. But what is remarkable is that there is a well-formed community and social support network already around our office, where our office is. It's in a center of the city, so there are a lot of shops and cafes, and it was really nice in the summer. But now the tea starts, and Birria are flooding every day. There is a different one, so I'm putting on weight, and we are following the news together. My Ukrainian is improving, but their Bulgarian is much better than mine, and I hope that in the new year we'll be going to see different Ukrainian cities after the war is over.
Занесла, я не знала, що буде не це. Цукерки знайдеш, чай знайдеш. Там піцу знайдеш.
Eva, are you still going?
No,
Is that you concluded? Okay.
no,
so
I
we
think
can-
I can go on forever, but I just wanted to be structured and then leave time for questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, thank you all for those lovely presentations. I really love the trajectory of our discussion, and I apologize if I'm coming in with myself echoing, so I hope I'm not for you.
Все. Я вернулась сидю.
But I like that we as a group, we've, let me go through my notes here. We really talked about the importance of varied levels of community engagement, that, we talk about community development, locally supporting populations, specific needs populations, specific groups, as well as national level advocacy. And through all of those, all of the groups mentioned aspects of learning from the past to promote peace, whether talking to individuals and learning lessons learned, or pulling from our experiences with COVID and other things to looking at examples for national level peace and how to advocate those at national, international levels, and connect with each other and coordinate programs. So I think we have a really rich basis to have a conversation from these presentations. One of the comments that came in was this is in reference to Liam's talk around peace talks as a part of a kind of MHPSS, or mental health and psychosocial support, which has its own UN advisory group and its own sort of pyramid structure for how it thinks about populations in need. And maybe we can sort of start there and talk about how community development is maybe a piece of that MHPSS kind of model, and maybe a way to think of that as part of an overall service in structuring peace worldwide. And so Liam or others,
Yeah.
feel free to jump in.
Absolutely, Holly. Yes, I think so. I'm very conscious, I think, of that so many people are traumatized by the war. People fleeing their homes that have been destroyed, parts of Ukraine that have been directly attacked by the Russian military, the shelling. So I'm conscious that trauma is probably, people are trying to deal with that, probably within Ukraine, the displacement, and also trying to settle in other countries. And maybe the last thing on their minds is talking about peace negotiations with Russia, and so I'm very aware of that. I feel we'd need to be sensitive of that. And the peace movement, I think, in Ireland, where we now have relative peace, needs to be aware of that as well. That maybe there needs to be time for that conversation to happen, but that it can be perhaps part, as you make the suggestion there, of the MHSS, the framework that you mentioned. And I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with it, but the mental health psychosocial support, is that correct? That is correct. And
yeah. I can speak a little about that if that's helpful.
Absolutely, Holly. Yes.
Sure. They often present itself as a sort of a pyramid approach, and the idea is in any population there are different groups going from small to large that require different types of services. So at the very top of the pyramid are people that even in normal circumstances require advanced mental health care, and that group, and when situations of trauma happen, that group can grow and needs sort of follow from there. But the idea is that everyone is covered under this pyramid. So at the bottom is sort of all of us. And that regardless of kind of our needs prior to some kind of conflict or trauma or natural disaster, et cetera, that all of us have some kind of need, and that programs need to gear themselves not only for the sort of the top of the pyramid, but also the broader pyramid, because when the fabric of society is torn away, it sort of takes all levels to pull it back together.
Yes.
And I really like that, bringing that framework into this discussion, because I think that the more we recognize the broadness of the base of that, and even stretch maybe outside of that model to think globally, which I think is your point in your presentation, really helps us to better advocate. Because I think one of the parts of the presentation that was really interesting is the reminder that when you're in and serving, it's very overwhelming, and you need people who are a little further away to help gather those voices and try to move things in other spaces. And I'm hoping others maybe can have other things to share about that.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. That just to say that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I in Ireland, and I'd love to hear from Alina too. But from Ireland at the moment, the response at community development is to support the people fleeing the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainian community in Ireland. That's probably the first priority at the moment, and to provide shelter, accommodation, and education, employment, all those needs, but also probably and then in dialogue with people from Ukraine to be able to then perhaps advocate for peace and an end to the war in Ukraine, just to frame it that way. But thank you for that.
So with that, Alina, you mentioned in the chat that my understanding that you were in Swords, Ireland, and have been there for the past couple of months. I wonder if you'll talk a little about that.
Yes, it's true. I'm in Ireland during 5 months, as I live, as many Ukrainian people, in a hotel in Swords, and I try to improve my English and to do some thing online, because I have on project Inclusion in Ukraine, and it's not a non-government organization, in just me, and I would like to do, like said Eva, I'm doing in online the same thing that Eva was described. I try to connect with parents with children with special needs and disability, and I try to lead some webinars for teachers in our country, and I try to inform about new literature, new, programs about our meeting now, and I'm just try to be useful as I can online, because here I'm psychologist and I can't now to do my standard work, because I'm researcher. And I'm just and I live in Swords, and I want to say thank you for help, because really I don't, unfortunately, I don't really believe that negotiations between Russia and Ukraine can solve anything, honestly. And they decided to create the examination of the extermination of the of the nation and the genocide, and they destroy our homes, and they don't need slaves. I'm sure that none of us to be wants to be on the territory of the invading country as a civilian. And despite the fact that maybe 60% of us are Russian speaking. But I believe that a lot of people are trying to figure out that's going on, and there are parallels with other wars, as Liam showed us, and I don't know. I hope, and I think everybody hope that the war will be stopped as soon as it's possible, and we will have a normal life, and we will come back to home, and we will feel support, and we will come back with new experience, new friends, and in my mind the world become more close than it was previous war. Absolutely. And I like Ireland, I like islands people, and I feel care, and I don't know, I like that I have a possibility to speak, to discuss, to listen, and to change some maybe something in my mind.
Thank you so much, Alina, for sharing your experiences, and I think you brought up some really interesting things around connectivity and how do you remain connected, and what does it mean to not become closed in the shape of all of this. And Yulia, I'm glad that you have your hand raised, because I was hoping to go to you next, because you had lots of organizations you work with, and I was hoping you maybe would talk a little bit about how you make your groups, how everyone works together, and what that looks like. And I wanted to recognize you for a second.
First of all, I wanted on behalf of all Ukrainian people, and especially of all Ukrainian mothers, to say thank you to everyone, every person, every organization, and every country which help us now, because this help is really huge. I'm also a refugee now. I live in Germany now with my children, and to go abroad was let's say, not the wish, but he insisted, my husband insisted that I left Ukraine with children. He is in the army now, almost from the first day of the war, and still he is there, but he is not a soldier. In fact, he's a teacher, but it was his will, it was his wish to go to defend his country. And that we feel now, I mean, we Ukrainian women with children, because 99% they are women with children, we feel just huge support from people, from ordinary people on the streets, from different organizations, from countries, and so on and so forth. And for me, as a head of the non-government organization, it is extremely difficult to organize my work. And I have already told that I cannot do as much as I did when I was in Ukraine. And it is also a very big problem, because when you got used to be very active, every day is planned for every minute, probably, because you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 million different things, and not forget about your family, about your children. And when you are just abroad and you want to do something, but you cannot, it is just a very, very difficult, unbearable situation, you know. And I'm lucky to have my members of organization who stayed in Ukraine. I have a lot of contacts of people who also stayed in Ukraine, and it was more or less, let's say, easy to organize some events, to organize some help, because when, for example, one of the partners says, well, we have, for example, I don't know, dairy products. We want to give them to those who need. And you have 3 more organizations, partner organizations, and you say, okay, we have dairy products. We want to give through us, right, to find who needs, who really needs. And it worked somehow. As I told you also, here I need... Here, by the way, I need the octopuses and send them with occasions to Ukraine from Germany. And that was therapy for me, because I appeared, and I occasionally appeared in Germany. I didn't plan, I never planned to go to Germany. When I appeared here, I was, you know, like in a shell. It was very difficult just to understand what is going on and what to do with children, what to do just in general. And I was lucky to have friends here who helped me, and for the first days they did 100% instead of me. They said, give me, for example, the documents, we have to send them there, you have to do 1, 2, 3, that, and only knitting these octopuses, that was for me like a therapy, really. And still I continue to do it and send them to Ukraine, because I know exactly that there are children, there are families who need them there. And we all, I think actually the Ukrainian people showed a real how to say, a real example of developing community, because I know, I think you know about the situation when, for example, for 3 to 5 days, Ukrainians could be able to collect the huge amount of money to buy some satellite, for example. Now I think all Ukrainians are just a really strong community, and we help each other, not from abroad to Ukrainian to those who stayed in Ukraine, but also here. Now I work in a local gymnasium. I work with Ukrainian children who are here, refugees who are here now. We do a lot of things. I help them in some cases. I help them with their studies because not all of them know German language. I help them psychologically. We do a lot of exercises, a lot of different things just to help them, because some of them are from, for example, from Mariupol, and they lost everything. They are luckily, unfortunately, not families, but their houses, their friends, their schools, everything. And really, it is really difficult to work with children with trauma. But we try to do what we can, being in Ireland, in Germany, in Bulgaria, and everywhere. And thank you very much once and once again for the work you do for all the Ukrainian people abroad. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of that. I'm really curious to learn more. It sounds like Yulia, you and Eva, you do a tremendous amount of work to coordinate services and multiple players at different levels, different sizes of NGOs, different families. I'm wondering if either of you can talk a little about what that process is, and just are there best practices and are there things that you've learned about how to facilitate those kinds of connections so that resources aren't wasted and that people are getting what they need? Are either of you able to speak a little about that?
Yes, I think it comes with experience, and it's very important, first of all, to have a good network built on trust and mutual respect. So I think the building bricks are those. And then you just imply common sense. And if you're lucky, you find somebody who is a really good coordinator. And of course, we have quality management systems and information management systems, and there are different tables and checklists. And we're trying to organize communication of different players and stakeholders as much as possible. But at the end, like now, Holly, when you asked the question, we were most successful and most efficient when we had good network, good group of people with trust and mutual respect among them, and that takes some time and shared learning and being humble. So I've learned that you cannot command. Like at some point there, you need to have one person responsible, especially when it's very complicated and there are too many phone calls and there is emergencies and somebody needs to be taken at the hospital and somebody to the birth home, like to deliver a baby, which also happened, and things like that. And people are remaining without the home. But it only helps if you get the respect and the trust of people. And then it also, like, that would be one thing. So invest in that. And the other thing is from time to time, especially when you're in the whirlpool of the things, take at least half an hour, I don't know, smoke a cigarette, sit down, write, think, reflect, learning. What is the priority? If there are too many, what are the priorities? Whom haven't I called yet? Are there resources that are not attracted yet? If you don't stop to reflect on that, you just continue 24/7, which happened. And I guess it happens to every one of us. And you miss opportunities and you miss people and you miss channels and resources. So from time to time, no matter what is the hurry, just sit down and do evaluate. And it's even easier if you do it with someone who is a bit more external to the organization, one of the helpers, and ask like what's going well, what is not so efficient. We had some failures in emergency. We didn't plan to do any humanitarian support, but you get to know people, they get to trust you, you're the only one. So we were in the middle of some humanitarian crises. So stop and think, ask for help, and ask for help in thinking also. I guess that's it, the basics.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I love that you started with a place of talking about trust and respect among groups is the foundation for being able to work together. And I think that can get easily forgotten when you're trying to coordinate resources very quickly and overwhelmed by need. It's really hard for even organizational systems to take a step back. And as you said, remember to be humble, to have some humility, and to develop that trust and respect so that the relationship can guide the services and the coordination. I really appreciate how you said that. I think it's a really, really good point for us to take away from this. Janice made a comment in the chat and with a resource at a welcome booth at the Winnipeg Airport. Janice, will you tell us a little about that?
Hi. Yes. What we're doing here in Western Canada, I'm in the province of Manitoba in the north. So there is a welcome booth. I mean, it was fully staffed the initial part of the invasion, and now it's still there. But if you arrive when it's when there's nobody there, there's a free phone and there's messages in English and Ukrainian language about where to call, and there's hotel rooms, etc., and money to help get set up. And I'm noticing people from the Ukraine are starting to get work in all parts of the provinces in the West, especially. And because there's the diaspora that Ukrainians have been coming to Canada from, I think, 1870. So historically, there's a lot of Ukrainians. And pierogies are like, they're staple on any buffet menu.
How wonderful.
And
Did you say
yeah,
it's
and
the third largest Ukrainian population in the world in Canada?
yeah, I mean, I was surprised when I saw that. They said, yeah, first, of course, Ukraine, and the second was Russia, and the third was Canada. I said, what? Yeah, but apparently Ukrainians, and then there are many farms. And if you are in Western Canada, like driving through Saskatchewan, you see these very small towns, and they usually have a small Ukrainian church. And sometimes there's two, like a Ukrainian Catholic and a Ukrainian Orthodox church. And in province of Manitoba, I think there's 6 schools that are designated bilingual primary schools. So children will learn in English and in Ukrainian language. And that's part of the more openness, I think, the past 50, 60 years. So yes, it's quite interesting. And I mean, most of us are trying our best to support the Ukrainian families that come over here. So, and the program is still open. I put the box in. So if anybody who is Ukrainian would like to come to Canada, there is support to get you started.
Thank you so much, Janice. I'm curious as to a fairly small group. Our other, can you tell us a little bit what questions or experiences you have that have brought you here today? Leo, I'm sorry, I thought I saw, I see you have a
Okay,
thumbs
yeah.
up. Do you want to?
Okay, yeah. I would like to thank everyone for your vision. I was listening to all 3 speakers. I am impressed, and I want to thank everyone because we are raising really an important topic. Yes, my name is Halia. I'm from Ukraine. I'm a teacher. I work in primary school. And honestly, when I was listening to Yulia, when you were talking about going to shelter, I could feel it because today we had an alarm and we were in shelter with kids. So it's something that we live with. And when I was also listening to Liam, your vision with this war, how can we actually solve it? How can we stop it? It also, yeah, when I was listening to it, I was really glad to hear like your vision of ending this war. And when I was listening to Ian, it's also incredible. I could cry with you. So yes, guys, thank you all. You're incredible. And I'm so glad to be here. And I welcome everyone. And thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Stephanie McDermott has a comment here for Janice. She mentions in Ireland, there's an acute shortage of housing, which is making resettlement very challenging. And she's wondering if there's a similar issue for you all in Western Canada. Janice, I don't know if you want to say something about that.
There's no doubt there is a housing shortage, but I find that like if people are willing to go to the smaller towns, etc., there is space. It's a big country, so we do have space. The problem if people go to the bigger cities, I guess like when I was in Dublin, I noticed that it gets expensive. So one of the nice stories that I see is people are moving from, like, they start in Winnipeg and then they find out there's small Ukrainian Canadian communities. And for example, Steinbach, they need people, and then there is housing. So people will make the move. It's not easy to go from the Ukraine to Canada with our weather and in English. and then to go to another place. But I read some reports. People are making their way, and the diaspora talking to each other. And so I think that, and we have a government-funded agency called here in the PA. It's called the PA Immigrant Services, and we help all people. I volunteer. I teach. I don't teach. It's a drop in English, and so it's like, want to talk? Janice will talk with you, and then it's a matter of sharing. And sometimes we share food, etc. Yesterday we had a Manitoba's this month is Cultural Days, and so the 4-H group, they got funding, and then they had a multicultural food fest that was free, open to everybody for samples, and if you wanted to buy a dish of something, it was available. So we try our best, but I tell people, you want to come to Canada, there's housing that's not that expensive, even in this town. And so it's just, you need to get out of the big cities, but we're tough, we could do it.
Thank you, Janice. I love that you said we're tough. It feels like there's a lot of different types of toughness represented in this group today. Just tenacity, belief in peace, belief in protection of each other, and thinking, Holly, of you and the children that you're working with every day, as well as our speakers. I see, Stephanie, you have your hand raised. Please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yeah. I guess. I think maybe Lean might have something to say about this. You know, in community development, we're just facing a huge challenge in terms of resettlement. You know, I work with Carlow Development Partnership now, and we have 5 centres in Carlow. One which is a community hall, which is a really difficult, challenging experience for anyone that has fled, and it's just a really difficult, because sometimes the tide is changing a little bit, you know, because we work with all migrants, and because we work with a lot of hard to reach groups, and you know, I've overheard conversations about the shortage of housing, and you know, all of this awful right-wing stuff that you hear, and it's just so difficult, I think, in Ireland for Ukrainians who are in accommodation centres. And you know, at the beginning it may have been, you know, a place to flee from, in terms of food, in terms of shelter, in terms of warmth. But, you know, we're looking at now, we're 4, 5, 6 months in, and it's, you know, there are mental health challenges. There are now, we have, obviously, we're offering English and all of that kind of thing. But it's really good to hear about the, you know, Western Canada experience. I would love to come to Western Canada and live in Western Canada. I have been in Saskatchewan and Manitoba and all of those places. And Janice is correct. You know, if people perhaps went to some of the smaller towns, but even the smaller towns in Ireland, and would you agree with me, Liam, even the smaller towns in Ireland are at a push. So it's heartbreaking for Ukrainians that are coming, because Ireland is just not in, although we give a great welcome, but the resources are stretched. The accommodation is not adequate in my view. Schools, primary schools particularly, are really good. Secondary schools are good. You know, there are college places, all of that. But, you know, if you don't have a home, if you don't have somewhere that you can call your own, it's very difficult to stay in any way mentally well. So I just hope that this winter is not going to be a difficult winter for Ukrainians. And it's just very difficult. And, Liam, would you like to?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. In Ireland, in the last census there in April, there are something like 60,000 vacant houses at the moment. However, we still have a housing crisis. I myself am in touch with LGBT Ireland because they're looking to match refugees. Originally it was Afghanistan, but now Ukraine, to try and find accommodation for the LGBT community. Okay. Originally we had the Irish Red Cross placing, you could make a pledge of a room in your house or a house to the Irish Red Cross, but it got very bureaucratic with the county councils. It went from Irish Red Cross to the local county council, local authority, and it has been delay and confusion. Yeah, so that's part of the problem. But there are small groups like the LGBT Ireland that are working to partner with, they're putting out calls for accommodation in the towns around the country outside Dublin, which is they're finding that quite effective. And groups like the group that Stephanie is supporting, they're working in the towns. So one of the things, yes, I agree also what Stephanie mentioned. We have a lot of negative misinformation from far-right elements that want to create division. They want to divide people, they want to divide the Irish population, the host community, from refugees in general, and then have different hierarchies of refugees and pitting vulnerable people against one another. And it's, we have to call that out by, I suppose, being generous, by giving and by showing positive in the face of the negativity, you know. You know, some of the crazy misinformation that's going around, you know, it's ridiculous and it's not true. So there's a lot of lies as well about what's actually happening, you know. Sorry, I mightn't have expressed that very well, but I hope it comes across okay.
Could I, Holly, is it okay if I reply to? It's not that Liam and I are having a conversation. It's just, yeah, unfortunately, where we're positioned beside Great Britain. And you look at the most recent election in Italy and you look at what's happening in Britain, you know, some of those sentiments tend to blow over, you know, they're here. And they give a lot of fuel, I would say. They give a lot of fuel to the right-wing elements. And yeah, Liam is exactly right. You know, we're meeting that every day. And because people become quite marginalized in their communities, they're looking for someone to blame. And of course, it is the most recent that will get the blame, which are Ukrainians, you know. So we have a big, in community development, we have a huge job to counteract that. And it's very much, you know, misinformation is one thing, but just a lack of critical thinking in the education system. So there are so many layers there that, you know, we really need to rethink so many levels, you know, in terms of our responsibility, in terms of community development approaches and practices, and all of that. And what I would say to students all of the time, and this comes into the classroom, and you would not expect that third level students, you know, would voice these, but I would always throw it back and say, well, give us the solution. You know, what do you think if we are calling ourselves a progressive society? You know, this is what it means to be progressive, you know. So it's a challenge. It really is a challenge. But you know, there are some very good people around who speak the same language, and that's what keeps us going, I think. So thanks, Holly, for giving me the floor there.
No, thank you. And I think the conversation, this conversation between Liam and all of us is important to remember that we all have this job in consistently working through misinformation to be the people we want to be and to try to do the right thing as a global society. And it's important to remember that we have to continue to have those difficult conversations and really speak honestly about what the challenges are and face them directly. And that brings me to, so we've got about 4 minutes left, and I wanted to I wanted to sort of bring back, Yulia, in your presentation, you talked about your octopuses and the other work about highlighting the voices of the experience of children. You talked about the book that had children's poems and things in it. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about, what should we be hearing from the voices of children and communities? And are there ways that we can pull those voices into these larger global conversations? I would really love your thoughts, as well as Alina, Halia, Eva, if you'd like to add in with that. What are the things that we should be hearing, and where can we find them?
Well, okay. First of all, I want to say that most of Ukrainian people and most of Ukrainian children who are abroad right now, they dream to come back. And one day I'm sure Alina has the same thoughts here, because we have really appreciate to the support we could find in the other countries. But anyway, we dream to go back home, and our children and their big wish is to go home. And as for example, to speak about my 3 children, now they all go to German school, and they also parallelly, they at the same time they have Ukrainian school online. So it is extremely difficult for them. I know that, because first of all, they have to study from the bottom, right from the very beginning, and also 2 schools are difficult. But anyway, we do that because we are sure that soon, I hope really soon, we could go home.
Thank you so much.
I have the same situation. My youngest daughter with me here, she studies in the Irish secondary school. She is 12. And she also studies online in Ukrainian school because we want to come back. But my eldest daughter, she's 23, and she's in Austria. And my husband in Ukraine, and sure, I would like to come back. It's I have a flat, I have a car, I have a job. I had a job, but I hope everything, even it's changed, everything will be okay.
I think that it was remarkable when we had this summer camp together, Ukrainian and Bulgarian children. They were not only Bulgarian, but also they were Turkish and Roma, different ethnic groups within Bulgaria. And these are friendships that will remain for life. I think using the opportunity for kids to make friendships right now is very important.
100%, yes. This is just a great opportunity for us, for our children, first of all, to know, to learn different cultures, different languages, and to share our culture with others and our language also. But still, I think that every Ukrainian child dreams about going home.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
We have we can experience a lot of things about living in different countries, and I'm sure that all of us, when we come back to Ukraine, we will bring this experience. We will take the best things from different countries, and we will be able to implement these ideas, this way of life, these some tips probably in Ukraine.
Yeah, and it's important also for our kids to get to know some real Ukrainian kids, which makes the myths and the rumors and the propaganda not withstand, because some of them were even afraid of Ukrainian kids because of all the propaganda. So it's important not to use this opportunity, as bad the circumstances, to actually make some friendships. And this is important for later when these are adults, and for them it will be more difficult to actually believe propaganda. So because they would know someone in those countries.
Thank you all so much. What a beautiful, beautiful place to come to time, that we're in a place to celebrate that in this terrible circumstance, there are opportunities to share and learn from each other and to build community in these long-lasting generational ways. Thank you all so, so much for sharing, for your conversation. I understand that people's email and contacts are in the information that the conference organizers have so thoughtfully prepared for us. And I look forward to us keeping in touch and really appreciate the session today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you
Very
all.
interesting.
Thank you. And I believe
Thanks, Holly. and
Inessa
everyone.
wants us to do a Facebook Live. So if the speakers can remain, and anyone else, Inessa, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, dear friends. I have a message for our participants. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the discussion. And as we want to make the experience as accessible as possible for our audience, and particularly for the Ukrainian audience, we are going to run a short live stream broadcasted on a Facebook page of Inclusive Practices, and just our speakers and Holly, I would like to ask you to stay with us. During the live stream, we will give the brief summary of our session, and it will be great if everyone will share in short in English, and Yulia, we will ask you to translate for our Ukrainian speaking audience. So everybody, thank you so much for all your emotions, for all your sharing thoughts.
Thank you.
I will just stay with Holly, Eva,
Bye, everyone.
Lim,
Take care.
and
Bye, Janice.
Yulia.
Bye,
Bye.
Dennis.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Stephanie.
Everyone.
Oh, how do I leave this?
I guess Yulia have some internet troubles. We will wait for her because she will translate this live stream for our Ukrainian speaking audience. So we'll check if she could join us. Yeah, that would be very
So Inessa, how do you see the live stream going? Do you want me to give an overview and then allow the speakers, or do you want me to stay silent, or how would you like that to run?
We are going to start with a short message. I'll just explain what is going on, that we just finished the session, and we will make the brief summary, and everyone will share, and just you, Lynn, Eva, and Yulia, you will just say a couple of words as a summary.
Okay, so I'll do a summary.
Come again?
I'll do a summary then after you do the introduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole live stream will be just a summary for our Ukrainian audience. Yes. And now we will find the session was brilliant. Holly, thank you so much. And Lynn, Eva. So full of emotions and full of contact and support in practice, real support. That's very important. Now we are going to find someone to translate. I guess that Julia has some problems with internet connection. Yeah. And for today, the last session for today will be plenary, climate and disability. I hope that you could join it. Our partners from CBM. Yeah, I can see Julia. Julia, you're back. So we are going live on Facebook if everyone is ready. Now I will turn off my microphone during the live stream will download, and then we will start. Julia, where are you? All right, Julia, you're with us. Okay, so we are going.
So I guess I have a little bit problems with internet, but now it's okay. So welcome everyone. I'm really glad to be here, and I wanted to tell in 2 words about my presentation, in which I told about what we do in Ukraine and how we support Ukrainian children with disabilities in Ukraine during the wartime. I also told about some organizations, about our organization, which continue to work and to help children and their families in Ukraine with not only with food, not only with some medicine, but also with some cultural events, some interesting excursions, and so on and so forth. And in my presentation, I also told about some our partner organizations to which we really thankful because they help and support children and their families, not only in Ukraine, but also abroad. And these are the organizations, for example, Osoblivi, special in English, NGO Faith in Miracle, Civic Society Development Forum, and our Polish partners. Thank you.
Yulia, and we will ask you to translate in Ukrainian shortly for our Ukrainian speaking audience.
Окей, no problem. В моїй презентації я розказала про те, як наша організація і наші партнерські організації допомагають дітям з інвалідністю в Україні і також сім'ям, в яких виховуються не тільки дітки, але й дорослі з інвалідністю. Я дуже вдячна нашим партнерам, які нам допомагають весь цей важкий час для України. І особливо для дітей з інвалідністю, тому що це особливо важко для них, тому що, як в принципі всі ми знаємо, що діти з інвалідністю, особливо зраз, вони звикають до того, що в них все налагоджено так, як вони звикли, до свого звичного життя. І коли трапляються такі ситуації, як зараз війна в Україні, коли все йде шкереберть, дуже-дуже важко їм. Тому я дуже вдячна нашим партнерам, які допомагають нам і членам нашої організації, які зараз роблять цю роботу в Україні самотужки і допомагають сім'ям, в яких виховуються діти з інвалідністю, не тільки продуктами харчування, не тільки побутовою хімією, а також організовують цілу низку важливих, цікавих івентів культурних, як то походи в різні цікаві місця, на спортивні змагання, екскурсії, онлайн заняття і так далі, і тому подібне. Дякую.
Thank you, Yulia. Dear friends, we welcome all of you on behalf of the Virtual World Community Development Conference 2022. Today is the first day of the conference, and as we want to make our experience as accessible as possible for our audience, and particularly for Ukrainian audience, we are going to run these short live streams to give a brief summary of our sessions. And today's session, which is on responding to humanitarian crisis, a role for community development. And I want to ask Holly, maybe you will share just a couple of words about this session.
Sure. Our session today talks about responding to humanitarian crisis, particularly the Ukrainian crisis, and different roles of community development. We had speakers that talked about serving families with special needs children and the challenges of starting with service-oriented programs and growing into psychosocial support and cultural programming and ways of stability beyond immediate needs. We talked about national level advocacy and the roles of other nations in promoting peace and what that looks like, different tools to use to think about peace building outside of areas of conflict. And we spoke about what the greatest desire of Ukrainian children among the people in our group were, which was to go home. So we were left with a message of Ukrainian children dream to come home, and are left with some thoughts on just how, as a world community, we all have a part to play, whether it's in direct support or thinking nationally about peace to make that dream a reality.
Я, мабуть, перекладу українською, так? Теж Холі розповіла про те, про що була наша сьогоднішня сесія. У нас було 3 спікери, ну про себе я вам вже розказала. Але в нас були ще 2 чудові спікери, це Іва і Ліам. Ліам розказав в своїй презентації про те, як на національному рівні, на прикладі Ірландії, можна пропагувати мир, і як можна домовлятися про мир, і що можна зробити для того, щоб дійти до миру, враховуючи, дивлячись на ту ситуацію, в якій зараз опинилася Україна, і що можна зробити на державному рівні для того, щоб налагодити мир в Україні. І Ева нам розказувала, вона із Болгарії, вона розказувала про те, як вони в себе в своїй громаді підтримують і займаються з дітками з України, особливо з дітьми з інвалідністю, які вони для них організували заняття, як розподілили їх на групи, і з якими труднощами вони стикнулися під час роботи з дітьми, оскільки майже всі діти приїхали травмовані війною, мається на увазі.
Thank you, Julia. Lim, as Holly already shared the content of the presentations and all of the session, I want to ask you to share what was the most remarkable for you, the most important, touchful for you during all this session. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Inessa. Yes, the most important thing for me in this session was the very rich conversation we had, and listening to the perspective from Yulia, from Holly, from Eva, from all the other participants, Ilana, Stephanie, and many more in the session. And I think it's dialogue between people is so important, and to share practical ways we can support people in humanitarian crisis, and also to, in the long term, build a settlement and peace. And we were thinking particularly of Ukraine, and our hearts and our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine. Thank you for a lovely session. Thank you.
Ліам сказав, що сьогодні була дуже така насичене обговорення, насичена сесія, під час якої він був радий почути різні думки стосовно того, яке бачення є у людей. Він також сказав про те, що вони завжди підтримуватимуть Україну і українців, і те, що зараз світ стикнувся з такою гуманітарною кризою, обов'язково знайдуться шляхи вирішення неї. І ще забула головну думку, яку Холі озвучила, сказати, що всі українські діти, з якими розмовляли, тим досвідом, яким поділилися всі спікери і учасники сьогодні, що всі українські діти мріють повернутися додому.
Thank you, Julia. Eva, please, a couple of words from your side.
I fully agree with Liam. I don't think there was one highlight. It was just a very, for me, like a heartfelt conversation. It was very interesting to hear different points of view. People who want to go home because their families are scattered throughout Europe, and people in Canada, in the prairies, in Manitoba, who want to help because they were helped when their parents were refugees from China, and different settlements and schools in Ireland and everywhere in Germany. It was just sharing ideas and what can be done, and like what is there was not an enemy. It was just what we can do as a group of people who feel the same, and how to be critical about news and propaganda and things like that. I kind of like the atmosphere and the tone of sharing, and the idea that everybody wanted to help and everybody is already helping. That was remarkable.
Також погоджується з Лаймом в тому, що їй було цікаво почути різні думки, дізнатися про те, як і що відбувається в різних країнах, і в Канаді, і в Німеччині, і в Ірландії, як допомагають біженцям у всіх цих країнах, і обмін досвідом і думками про те, що може бути зроблено для того, щоб подолати кризу, яка зараз сталася.
Thank you everyone for this lovely meeting, very important meeting. Thank you, Julia, Holly, Leon, Eva. Thank you, our dear friends, for watching us, for staying with us. We stand with Ukraine, and as Liam, you said, this is just a conversation between people. And thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Anessa.